everybody, Penny here. Welcome to my kitchen. Sorry I missed last week. I really wasn't feeling well, so there was no video last week. I apologize for that. But this week we have another super easy, no bake, no stove dessert. And it comes out of a cookbook that I have had for over 20 years called Friends Forever and Ever Cookbook. And it's a collection of favorite recipes from the staff and friends at the Newfoundland Cancer Foundation. And this book has always provided lots and lots and lots of really, really good recipes. So I was glancing through it again. I love to glance through my cookbooks. Almost every day I'm looking at a cookbook of some kind. And this one was called Reese's Pieces. So I thought, well, wait now. Reese's Pieces are the little candies. Do they mean Reese's peanut butter cups? And I think that's more what they were trying to mimic. And it has the same flavors as a Reese's peanut butter cup. So I'm going to call them peanut butter squares because they're not in little cups like you get in the bars. But they're really, really good, really, really easy. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is gather our ingredients. So you need, let me see, 2 3/4 cups of graham wafer crumbs, which happens to be exactly 1 400-gram bag. So if you buy a 400-gram bag, you don't even have to measure. Then it says 2 3/4 cups of icing sugar, but it also states you can cut it back to 2 cups if you find it too sweet. So that's what I've done. So this is 2 cups of icing sugar, and then 1 cup of peanut butter. This is smooth peanut butter, but if you prefer crunchy peanut butter, go for it. And then it also calls for 1 cup of melted butter, which we're going to do in just a second. And it calls for 1 cup of chocolate chips, and then another 2 tablespoons of butter. So I'm going to show you how to measure that without technically measuring it in a measuring spoon. So this is the butter that I buy, and this is a 2-cup block. So to get 1 cup, all you have to do is cut it in half, which I've done here, and the 1 cup is in this bowl. So we're going to put this in the microwave. And melt that while we do some other things. So what I have left here is the other 1 cup. So what we want to do is break that down to get our 2 tablespoons, which have to go in with our chocolate chips. So if you cut this in half again, you're left with a 1/2 cup and a 1/2 cup. If you cut your 1/2 cup in half, then you end up with a 1/4 cup and a 1/4 cup. And every 1/4 cup is equal to 4 tablespoons. So to get your 2 tablespoons, all you have to do is cut that in half. And ta-da! 2 tablespoons of butter. And that's going to go in with our chocolate chips. So that's just a little lesson on how to cut down your butter without dirtying your measuring spoons. Okay, so our butter is somewhat melted. So what I'm going to do now is add in our 1 cup of peanut butter, because that needs to be good and soft as well in order to mix everything in. Okay, so there we are. So we're going to put that back in the microwave for about 35 seconds, and it was about 45 seconds the first time. So while that's in the microwave, we're going to prepare our pan. So you need a 9x13 pan. It can be a glass pan, metal pan, doesn't really matter, because it's going in the fridge, not in the oven. And what we're going to do is make a sling. And a sling allows you to lift out the squares all in one big block and then cut them on a cutting board, instead of having to cut them in the pan and maybe scratch your pan, and you know, the first one always comes out a little wonky and so on. So we're going to take our parchment paper, and You want it longer than your pan because we're going to be creating handles. And you want it to be as close to the full width of your pan without it going up the sides as you can get it. So that looks pretty good. Sorry for the noise. Nope, without it going up the sides. It's going up the sides just a little bit on this side. So I'm just going to fold that down. You don't have to grease your pan. There's enough butter in this recipe that it's not going to stick to anything. Okay, so that's our sign made. See? Okie dokie. We'll lay that to one side, and we shall take out our butter and peanut butter. And before we start mixing that, we're going to put in our chocolate chips and our butter. And that's going to go in for about 20 seconds. We're going to stir it probably another 15-20 seconds until it's the consistency that we like. There we go. So, now, look at that. It's so good. So now we can add in our graham crackers. There we are. Mix that up a bit. And I wouldn't put the icing sugar in there all at the one time, because if you do, you're going to get powdered sugar everywhere. So you take your time, and if you fold it, remember, go around the sides, fold it over, go around the sides, underneath, fold it over. You tend to mix it a little easier, and if you just start stirring, you're going to have powdered sugar everywhere. So you want to be nice and gentle. Okay. So we have our peanut butter, we have our butter, we have our graham crackers, we have our icing sugar. I'm going to mix all this up. And once we get it all mixed up, then we are going to press it into the bottom of our pan. There we go. It takes a minute for the icing sugar to get all absorbed. But you'll get there eventually. And if you're doing this in a stand mixer, again, a little bit of icing sugar at a time, because if not, you will have icing sugar powder everywhere. Oops, a little bit escaped. Okay, so that's pretty much ready. We have to stir our chocolate chips first. And it's not even melted, so we're going to put it in for another 20 seconds. And we'll put this in our pan. Now, if you don't have a 9x13 and you wanted these to be a little thicker, you could use a 9x9 or an 8x8. Not a problem. They would be a little higher, a little thicker, and that's okay. So, essentially what we need to do is use our clean hands, and I washed mine before we started, and start pressing this down into your pan. Make sure you get it fairly even all the way around. Doesn't even really stick to your hands. There's so much butter in there, but it's good. I made these 2 weeks ago, and they were supposed to be last week's recipe. But like I said, I wasn't feeling very well, so it didn't get done. But we really enjoyed them when I tested the recipe. Barry in particular really, really liked them. So, and this just takes a minute. Push it out from the middle, out into the sides. Might even use your knuckles a little bit. And make sure it's not going up the edges, it's to the edges. but it's not going up the edges. We're not trying to create a crust that we're going to fill. We're just creating the bottom part of a cookie. And these are really great, almost like 2-bite brownie size. So we should be able to cut these into about 40 squares. When I cut them, we had 35 squares, but some of them were a bit big. So 40 squares, easy. So now we shall check on our, now we're starting to melt. See, the butter is starting to melt there. There we go. So we shall stir these around. And the butter helps it be not as solid as it was. There we go. And it's not all melted, so we're going to put it in for another 20 seconds. So when you cut these and then you want to store them, you need to store them in the fridge. So what I did was take like a cookie tin or whatever container you have and put a layer of them on the bottom, and then take a sheet of parchment paper, lay it in between, and another layer so they don't stick to each other while they're in the fridge. As long as they don't stick to each other in the fridge, it's all good. So this looks like it's almost done. But you know what? I'm going to add another 1 tablespoon of butter. Just because I would like to have that a little bit smoother. So let's give it another 15 seconds. And see what happens. It should be very smooth then. We're going to spread it across the top of our base layer, and then we're going to put it in the fridge for at least a half an hour. An hour would be best, but at least a half an hour, and then we'll be able to cook them. Aha! Now, that looks better. So when you write out, or if you're writing down this recipe, I would say 3 tablespoons of butter. It works a little bit better. Makes it a little bit smoother in the chocolate chips. Haha, there we go. And I am just going to go over here and get a spatula. Right back. Okay. So, let's scrape off our spoon. Give it to Barry to lick. And the bottom of the bowl is warm, but it's not hot. So just be careful when you're taking things out of the microwave. Sometimes they can get a little hot. So while this is still warm, we're going to spread this out onto our mixture. And it needs to be warm to do that. If your chocolate is not warm, it's going to be really hard to spread. As we learned the first time we made it. And actually, Barry spread the chocolate. And he is very much a perfectionist. So every little crumb and crevice was covered with chocolate. I like things to be really nice. And in some things I would consider myself a perfectionist. But sometimes Barry goes a little OCD with it, you know. But that's okay. They were delicious. All right. There we go. Look at that. That's so pretty. So pretty. Now, this is not diabetic friendly. However, very, very, very good. Okie dokie. So, there we have it. We're going to put it in the fridge for at least a half an hour, probably an hour, and then we'll be back to cut them up, and I'll show you how the sling works. everybody, back again. Okay, so our peanut butter bites, our Reese's Pieces, sort of, peanut butter bites are ready. They're nice and chilled, so obviously you don't have to undo this side or this side because our sling is in place. But you still have to cut down the sides where the sling isn't, otherwise she will stick to the pan. So we'll just do that quickly. Well, you don't have to do it quickly, but you know. And this part is a little bit of a two-person job. So take your handles. Gary's going to hold on. Ta-da! Ta-da! Isn't that cool? I think that's so cool. And you can do that with day crumbles, brownies, anything that you would take out of the pan and then cut into squares. You can make a sling out of parchment paper or wax paper. And tin foil might work, but it's not as smooth as the parchment paper. And if you tear it, it's easier to tear. Yeah, so Barry, would you mind letting Molly out? Molly's scratching at the door. So let me get a knife. And you want a fair size knife for this, something that's flat along the edge. And you can cut it into as many pieces as you want. So I'm going to cut it in half. And then, of course, cut it in half again. And you can cut it as small or as big as you want. And because these have to be refrigerated, they would also do very, very well in the freezer. There's nothing in there that cannot be frozen. There's graham cracker crumbs and butter, sugar, and chocolate. So if you wanted to make up some of these for a special occasion and then turn around or Christmas even and take them out as you need them, that would be lovely. And there you have it. Peanut butter bites. Really good. Hope you try it. Enjoy. Bye.